it is it's a day that's going to live in infamy. And, it's Pearl Harbor, it's Czechoslovakia, and it's really an attack on the Western world. A free, democratic European nation was attacked by 3,000 tanks in Europe, not defended with a nuclear threat umbrella. It's a devastating war. We don't know the outcome. We don't know the outcome of most wars. And of course, it's rolling oil markets, food markets, and it's changing everyone's mind about national security around everything, whether it's food, energy, technology, et cetera. It's a chance for the Western world to get its act together. The autocratic world thinks that the Western world's a little lazy and incompetent. There's a little bit of truth to that. This is the chance to get our act together and to solidify the Western free, democratic, capitalist, free people, free movements, freedom of speech, freedom of religion for the next century. Because if we don't get this one right, that kind of chaos you can see around the world for the next 50 years.
There have been a lot of Lehman comparisons made in recent weeks and months with regards to the fallout from the energy crisis. You are the only Wall Street CEO who is around to navigate the global financial crisis. How worried are you about Europe this winter, given everything that's going on in Ukraine and with the energy supply?
Yeah, well, I think we're getting energy completely wrong, which is, ever since this war started, you've known that Europe was going to have a problem, and that it was pretty predictable that Putin was going to cut off some gas and certain oil, and oil price would go up. And by the way, for the climate folks here, it's made the climate worse, because people had this bad assumption that high oil prices and gas prices will reduce consumption, reduce CO2. No. Poor nations, India, China, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, are turning back on coal plants, as are rich nations called Germany, Netherlands, France. We have it completely backwards. And in my view, America should have been pumping more oil and gas, and it should have been supported. We're trying to have our cake and eat it too a little bit. And so you have the problem this winter, which it sounds like they've got enough supply to get through this winter, but we have a longer term problem now, which is the world is not producing enough oil and gas to reduce coal, make the transition, create security for people. So I would put it in a critical category. And this should be treated almost as a matter of war at this point, not as nothing short of that. So, people don't be surprised. Like, I was not surprised at Nord Stream 1 being blown up. I wouldn't be surprised if it's another pipeline or a tanker in the wrong place. And people need to be prepared at this one, and obviously America needs to play a real leadership role. America is the swing producer, not Saudi Arabia. And we should have gotten that right starting in March. It's almost too late to get it right, because obviously these are longer term investments.
Speaking of getting it right with regards to Saudi Arabia, President Biden was heavily criticized for his efforts in the Middle East, OPEC going ahead with their production cuts despite President Biden pushing against that. How would you say the Biden administration has handled things, and has Biden been strong enough?
I think they've done a good job. I obviously don't agree with everything the administration has done. And I think all of us need to focus more on growth agendas, which we really don't do very much of. But I think they've done a very good job coalescing the Western world, keeping it together around this war in Ukraine. And that's good. That needs to be sustained, because this can go on for years. The notion this might end right away, I think, is a false notion. I think we should have and could have done more in oil and gas. I think, if you're an American leader, obviously you're going to deal with people that you may not want to deal with. I'm not talking about Saudi Arabia. FDR and Winston Churchill dealt with Stalin. And I think people are making a mistake to have butterflies and roses and stuff like that. That's not what this is. And obviously we should be working with Saudi Arabia. They've been a longtime ally. They are a producer of oil and gas. I don't know what the private conversations are. I do think that in the long run, they are far better off aligning with America than with some of those other folks. And I think they probably know that, and I would assume that was part of the president's conversation.
Let's take it back to market.
I should remind people, it's still the American military that protects all that oil flow around the world, including the oil going to China.
I want to just circle back to your initial comments around Russia, Ukraine. You seem particularly concerned about this war and its impact. Do you see Putin using tactical nuclear weapons?
I couldn't possibly comment on that any more than you know. So, yeah.
And if you could,
but what comment I will make? Nuclear proliferation is still the greatest threat to mankind. Okay, if we're not sitting here in 200 years, it'll be because of nuclear proliferation. And I do think this is an example that how important it is. And I think Putin also taught the world that having a nuclear weapon gives you pretty much authority to bully any neighbor you want.